Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here. My inaugural address, I asked legislators to listen to the message voters sent in the last election, calling for us to focus on affordability and think about what Vermonters need to thrive, not just survive. Now that we're halfway through the legislative session, I believe that it's still true today. It may be even more important as we listen to the rhetoric, as well as absorb the changes coming out of Washington, because while we can't control what they do on the federal level, we can do our part to pass policies that make Vermont more affordable, not less. My team put forward common sense proposals that help achieve what I believe Vermonters elected me and many legislators to do, some of which are moving through the legislative process. An important and critical step towards making Vermont more affordable is reducing our tax burden, which is among the highest in the nation. Commissioner Scholdice will talk more about our tax relief proposals in a minute, but they include things like exempting the tax on military pensions, reducing the Social Security tax burden, expanding the Earned Income Tax Credit, and expanding the Child Tax Credit, which we believe will help reverse the demographic trends we're seeing. As I've said for years, if we want to be able to afford what we currently have and continue to make strategic investments in shared priorities, we need more taxpayers, not more taxes. From 2010 to 2022 alone, we had 14,000 fewer Vermonters under the age of 18, 28,000 fewer age 40 to 54, and 48,000 more over the age of 65. This means fewer high school graduates, fewer enrolling in our state colleges, fewer paying health care premiums, fewer in the workforce, and fewer in the trades to build and maintain the infrastructure and housing we desperately need. With fewer to pay for the growing burden of taxes and fees, it becomes less and less affordable for those still here. Demographics and affordability go hand in hand, which is why we need to make Vermont a more affordable place to live, while also addressing our demographic challenges. As I said earlier, there's a lot of uncertainty at the federal level right now, especially with the ongoing threat of tariffs, which is a challenge for businesses to plan ahead and for Vermonters to know how tariffs may or may not impact their needs like groceries, gas, or utilities and energy. We'll continue to separate fact from rhetoric as we evaluate the very real impacts to our state, and we'll also continue working with our congressional delegation as well as the White House to mitigate the impacts whenever possible. But while we're doing that, we can also work together to reduce the tax burden on Vermonters so they can keep a little more of what they earn. With that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Scholdice.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, everyone. And Governor, thank you for the opportunity to talk today about your proposals to provide Vermonters with real tax relief. As many of you know, the Governor in his fiscal 26 budget put together a number of proposals to help Vermonters keep more money in their pockets. There were 4 specific proposals, which the Governor referenced just a minute ago. The first was the Vermont Child Tax Credit. This credit would be expanded for families with children by increasing the age cap from age 5 to age 6. This tax break is targeted to help families of low and middle income by providing a $1,000 credit per child. This credit has been a proven track record for reducing child poverty and providing greater stability for families. Vermont has been a leader when compared to other states in providing young families with a strong start. And quite honestly, I think we all can agree it's just the right thing to do. The second was the Earned Income Tax Credit. The Earned Income Tax Credit is a fully refundable federal tax credit and is recognized as one of the most successful anti-poverty programs in the country. Currently, Vermont offers a 38% credit of the federal for eligible taxpayers, and the governor has proposed that we increase that to 100% of the federal credit for those filers without dependents. This proposal would target about 14,000 working Vermonters with incomes below $24,000 per year. The third is Social Security exemption, which is a proposal to exempt crucial taxpayers for senior citizens by increasing their income eligibility limits from an exemption by an additional $5,000 up to $65,000 for individual taxpayers and $80,000 for couples filing jointly. You may recall that in 2022, the governor expanded, and with the legislator's approval, this program, which was the right thing to do at the time to make sure that Vermonters could keep more money in their pockets, specifically the seniors. Unfortunately, as has been in the news for quite some time now, inflation and the rising costs that we are currently seeing means that we need to make another adjustment now. Remember that as workers look to where they want to retire, we must be competitive. 41 states don't tax Social Security at all, including 3 adjoining states of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and New York. This is the least we can do to help Vermonters retire with independence, dignity, and give them some breathing room as they look to manage on their fixed incomes. And lastly is the military pension exemption. This proposal seeks to fully exempt military pensions and survivor benefits for Vermonters on their income tax. I personally am embarrassed to say that Vermont has the weakest exemption on military benefits in the country. When we thank members of our military for their service, this would show them we mean it and join 35 other states that don't tax military pensions. One of the major benefits of this exemption, I believe, is that it also serves as a retention and a recruitment tool to bring retirees from the federal government into Vermont and give them an opportunity to have their second career here in the great state. A little fact that was interesting as I was preparing my remarks today is the average military retiree is between the ages of 35 and 50. So as you can see, that second career is a real option. Not taxing the military pensions, we would honor those who have served and reaffirm that Vermont is a state that welcomes retirees into our workforce, but more importantly, or as importantly, into our communities. We've all heard the governor say and talk about affordability since he became governor. This is not a new topic. Now is the time to pass these proposals, which, as you can see, really span from birth to death, for our children, our families, our workers, our retirees, and yes, our senior citizens. These are sound tax proposals that provide direct benefit to tens of thousands of Vermonters. We have seen momentum for these proposals in the legislature. We just want to make sure they don't get lost. Specifically, now in H 483 is the refundable credits and the Social Security. I want to strongly encourage the legislature to make sure that the benefit for military pensions and survivors does not get lost in the shuffle. I'll stop there and take any questions you may have. And Governor, thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will open up to questions.
The House bill that included a lot of these tax credit proposals was supposed to be on the floor last week, was ended up pulling off on back to House Ways and Means. Do you have any idea of the timeline of when that's potentially going to come back?
I think you're asking the wrong person. This is a separation of powers thing. But I don't know why it was brought back to committee, but I thought there was broad agreement, certainly amongst the sponsors for many of the initiatives of legislators. So I think whatever comes to the full House and then the Senate, I would expect to pass based on the number of sponsors for the bill.
There's some real philosophical opposition to the concept of military pensions exclusively getting that exemption. Do you respect the other side's position on that?
I'm not sure what the broad perspective is. I just know the majority of legislators signed on to that particular piece of legislation. So I don't know how broad it is. And if you're talking, I don't know, maybe I should ask you, what are you talking about specifically?
I was talking to Ann Cummings about it, and she said, Ethan Allen would be rolling over in his grave. He was totally opposed to the idea of emolument, of an aristocracy where a certain class of citizens, by virtue of their jobs or their roles, get preferential treatment from government. And there are firefighters that die in the line of duty. There are police officers that put their lives on the line every day. There's ER nurses that are dealing with God knows what. And it's inappropriate for us as a chamber to be making special accommodations just because somebody decided to make their sacrifice in the form of military service.
I would say a couple of things. One, in terms of this initiative with military pensions in particular, we are the poster child for many organizations, organizations saying, don't move to Vermont. If you're going to retire somewhere, here's the states you should go to. And Vermont's not one of them. In fact, we're one of probably just a handful, 2 or 3, that doesn't do this. So this is preventing that population where we need workers desperately. People who wanted to start another career, bring along TRICARE as well. I think it's a benefit, it's a win-win for all of us. So, the horse started out of the barn in regards to what Ethan Allen might do. He probably would have made his opinion known throughout the country. So the rest of the country's done this. And now it's just Vermont that's lagging behind. And I don't think Ethan Allen would want to see Vermont lagging behind in this initiative. So in regards to the others you spoke about, whether it's firefighters or law enforcement and their pensions and taxes and so forth, let's have that conversation next session. Let's pass this. This is something we've been trying to get passed for 8 years now. So let's pass this, then let's have the conversation about the other categories you spoke of.
You may have seen the news, Governor, about a Tufts University PhD student who's from Turkey who was detained by ICE and brought to St. Albans and flown out of the Burlington airport. I'm wondering if, were you aware that ICE was using, our international airport for these purposes?
I wasn't aware until this morning that individual was brought to Vermont, and I don't believe they were brought for detention in the traditional sense or what we know of. I think brought to the ICE office, possibly in St. Albans. So I don't know much more about it than that, but I wasn't made aware.
You've been very clear about, I guess, how you think about ICE and Border Patrol in terms of, if someone commits a crime, they should be held accountable. If people are, established in our community, they're contributing to the economy, that's another thing. I mean, how do you think about this scenario involving a student on visa who was then detained by, masked plainclothes officers?
Yeah, I saw the video on that, and we should be ashamed that we've come to this level. A student visa, maybe we may not agree, all of us agree with what she was saying, but that's a right in our country. And this person should be allowed to do that. It's a constitutional right. So, again, I think they're stretching the limits in this case, and probably other cases as well.
And as you made clear, what's maybe interesting about this case is this person wasn't detained in a Vermont prison, it seems, so the state wasn't involved in that capacity. Do you see some way for the state to, limit its cooperation in more situations like this where, Vermont's infrastructure is used, but maybe not state properties?
Yeah, well, again, this is a federal office. I think Senator Leahy had fought to have this ICE office in Vermont, so it's here, and something that the federal government has control over. We don't have control over what they do there. But again, I've been fairly clear in terms of what I believe we should be doing. Those who are here peacefully and helping to our society and working in some of the jobs that we have available, we should just leave them be. If they've done something that's egregious, that's criminal, that's violent, then we should help them remove them from our state and the country.
You said you found out this morning that this all happened. So if something were to say happening like this in the future, is this something you hear from the federal government, or you just get, say, tipped off from other people you know as involvement, or do they have any right or responsibility to inform you when something like this happens?
I don't know if they have any responsibility to inform us about something like this. I actually saw it on the news. I didn't see it anywhere else.
During Donald Trump's first presidency and during his campaign for this presidency, you made it really clear that you had lost faith in his ability to lead this country. Upon his election, you said, let's give him a chance, see if it's different. Where are you at now?
I have my concerns, obviously, especially, for instance, tariffs. I've made that known as well. I'm not a big fan of tariffs. We obviously have a right to defend ourselves in some respects in a trade situation, trade war, but we started this one, and we had ample opportunity. In fact, the president had worked very hard, and I gave him great credit for USMC, the treaty agreement that was done just a few years ago. He was directly involved in that. If they want to do something in terms of adding tariffs, doing something, just open the agreement back up. Negotiate with Canada, negotiate with Mexico. But to just, a broad, I guess, assault on tariffs and our friends to the north and south, I just is counterintuitive to me. So in that regard, I think his rhetoric is hurting our economy at this point. Maybe in time we'll see the merits of all this, but it's hard to see that at this point.
Governor, more than 100 businesses, if you will, Vermont organizations signed on to a letter they said was delivered to you and lawmakers on Monday, urging Vermont leaders to speak up and take action to defend democracy. Have you seen that letter? Have you read it? What is your response?
I have not. I know there was a letter, and I know it was signed by about 100 organizations, but I haven't read it yet myself.
I think there are a lot of Vermonters that want more from you on that front right now, right? They want to see the Phil Scott of 2020, the guy that called on President Trump to resign from office. And you've not given that to them to date. Is that an intentional thing on your part? Do you carefully think about the way in which you talk about President Trump, and if so, what informs your decision about how far to go?
Yeah. Well, again, I've said this repeatedly. I don't believe it's good for our state to live in chaos for another 45 months. And there's a countdown there, right? So if we let the rhetoric take over our lives, we're taking our eye off from other things that we should be paying attention to here in the state. I believe we should be doing everything we can to make sure our economy is sound, that we grow our economy, and that we make Vermont more affordable. And we take care of the most vulnerable. We do all the things that I've been promoting over the last 8 years by letting the president dictate what we pay attention to. It's almost like a weakness on our part, because we have so much work to do here in the state. We need education reform. We should be paying attention to that. We need to educate Vermonters of what that means. And if we don't do it, if we stumble here in this legislative session and we don't have reform in our education system, this will put us years behind. And it'll increase costs, increase taxes, we should be doubling down on that. We should be doubling down on housing, putting some of the proposals we put into place, and using them to work our way out of the crisis we face here in the state. So by diverting our attention to the president, that probably won't have a lot of effect on him, I think would just be almost a dereliction of duty that I have to make Vermont better.
Governor, H91, reworking of the state's homeless housing plan, was approved on second reading yesterday. It's up for final approval this afternoon in the House. Former Senator and Rutland Treasurer Wendy Wilton said today that, quote, "This bill will create a forever class of hotel, motel, homeless population. No incentive to seek permanent housing. This is no solution. This is a money pit on a grand scale." Do you agree or disagree with that statement? And are you inclined to veto this bill if it reaches your desk in its more or less current state?
Yeah, too early to talk about veto at this point. I'm not opposed to trying to work with communities because they have people on the ground that understand their needs in that particular area. But I do believe, and I've seen it in our own program, we need more parameters on the program so that we're not taken advantage of, that we don't spend more money than we do today. I'm concerned that this bill spends, I think, $45 million, and it's a $10 million, or maybe more, because it's like a $10 million increase to what we're doing today, and that's moving in the wrong direction. So, again, I may have issues with some of pieces of that legislation, but in terms of working with the community in some way, I think it has some merit.
All right, we'll switch over to the phones now. Tim, Vermont Biz.
Hey, Governor, I have a question about the military pensions, but first of all, speaking of the federal government, what is the latest, do you know, on the federal office building just down the street from you right now? It was supposedly up for sale. It'd be unimaginable right now for someone to actually take that on the U.S. government's hand. But do we know what the status of that building is? I
have not heard anything of late on that. They announced, I believe, four buildings in Vermont, but I think they pulled at least a couple of them off. I don't know what they're doing.
And that was up for sale before President Trump took office, right? Weren't they talking about trying to sell that last year? No?
I don't believe so. I don't think it was. Yeah, there was just no talk. In fact, that was part of our frustration that we tried to get involved and offer space to the Postal Service on a temporary basis, or even maybe longer term. But we had trouble getting through the bureaucracy.
It's abandoned right now, right? There's nothing in there right now.
Yeah, I don't believe it. It's not open for business, no.
Yeah. Following up on Pete's question about the military pensions, it seems like a no-brainer for several years to have this go through, and one of the holdups, as Pete mentioned, was that basically the thank you for your service part of it, where if it was sold as, yes, let's have an economic development plan that includes these military veterans, as Commissioner Schulteis mentioned, it's a working group. A lot of them are in their 30s still, with a full pension. They have a lot to offer in a lot of different ways. Why not just sell it from an economic development point of view? Because that seems to be where the strength of the proposal is.
Well, obviously we need to work on our messaging, because that's been the basis for why we want this to move forward. I think it was ever since my first budget address. I said, these are folks who are going to retire at an early age. They need a place to retire to. They still have an interest in being productive in the workforce, and they have TRICARE, and so they're not a burden on our healthcare system, but they would be helpful in terms of being a part of Vermont and, part of our workforce. So I guess we need to do a better job in our marketing skills.
Well, I know that as Pete suggested, that legislators, even going well before this session, going back several sessions, have remarked on that piece of it. So, okay, that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keith Whitcomb, Rutland Herald.
I have no questions today, thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Go back to the room.
Going back to immigration, this is why I'm asking you, because we've had viewers email us or people, and we're not 100% sure if it's true. They said they believe they've seen people being held in the South Burlington Women's Correctional Facility. I guess can you just speak to it all? Have there been any people in that realm of immigration deportation held in any state-run prisons in Vermont?
I'm not aware of any mass roundups of any facilities in Vermont at this point in time. Now, whether there's been one or two, that could be. I just don't know. I'm looking at Secretary Samuelson. Do you have any information on that, or is it something you can comment on at this point?
No, we have not. We have not seen any mass roundups or folks coming in mass to our correctional facilities.
You say mass, but
Well, no more than, I think.
No
from
more
my-
than usual.
No more than usual. I mean,
No more
we
than
have
usual.
detainees in the program almost, we've had that for years. But we haven't seen anything different than what we normally see.
So, Governor, the migrant justice people told me yesterday that that's right. There aren't any more than usual, but they are being held longer, is what they said. Is that the case? And if so, why?
Typically, it's about 72 hours from what I understand, but it may be longer than that. I don't know.
So we are seeing the normal and usual amount of people who are in our correctional facilities, but we have started to see the 72 hours, which is a federal regulation of how long individuals are held in our correctional facilities, begin to creep up slightly.
Why is that?
We believe that that would have to be a question that you would ask the federal government.
So that's a federal decision?
It's a federal decision.
So instead of a day or so, it's sort of maxing out more often after 72 hours?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Governor, today on the Senate floor, there was potentially going to be an amendment that might be moved to tomorrow. The Senate Democrats were concerned about the legality of your executive order on Friday. Republicans were going to try to retroactive to make it all fair. And Jermaine, I guess, do you know what those legal concerns are, or what the issues are, why there would need to be an amendment on the BAA?
I don't know what their concerns are. I heard their concerns previously, that we were exiting folks that were truly more vulnerable, those with kids and families. I took that to heart. I think I talked about this last week in this press briefing. So we decided that we need to rectify that. We didn't want to have those who are elderly with medical issues or families with kids exiting the program. We wanted them to finish out the school year where they're going to school right now. So we rectified that in the executive order. So that was the concern I heard before. I thought we fixed that. If they have concerns about the legality, they could just adopt our EO and put it on the BAA, and that would be something I could sign.
And my last question, very different. In House Education today, there were members of AOE talking about their trip to Washington last week. There was a conference in the Department of Education. They talked about how there's some money in Vermont might be on the line now with freezing from DOE. I guess just what did you make of talking with AOE if you did after they returned from Washington and some of the funding issues they may have talked about?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of uneasiness amongst Human Services, amongst the AOE, and agriculture. So we have concerns, but I know that there are some that are real. Secretary Saunders might be able to speak to that at this point, but I know that you were able to draw down some funds before the cutoff time.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Governor. We received received notification on Friday afternoon from Secretary McMahon that the administration would not honor the late liquidation request that had been previously approved by the former administration. So what that means, it does have a financial impact both for our districts and the state agency. So our current estimates of that at this point is about over a $15 million impact in terms of being able to deliver on those grant commitments that had previously been approved. There is a waiver process, and we are intend to submit a waiver. We're also hosting office hours with our districts to give them the latest information and support them with the waiver process.
How much authority does Vermont have over the question of when and whether ICE can use a state correctional facility to detain somebody that they have in custody?
I believe we have an agreement with them with so many beds, but I don't know what that agreement stipulates. But I think it's an agreement we do on a yearly basis that gives them a certain number of beds at a certain price.
And is there a point at which you rethink that agreement based on what you're seeing as it relates to detention activity and immigration enforcement activity by ICE?
Well, again, we haven't seen anything rise dramatically.
Detention times are creeping up, apparently.
Well, I mean, I don't know when you're talking creeping up. We may be talking about 72 hours to 80 or 90 hours. I don't think they're creeping up in a long stretch.
I guess I'm just wondering if you've expressed some concerns with the way ICE is doing its business, right? And I'm wondering if there's a point at which you decide you no longer want our state correctional facilities to be involved with that activity.
Yeah, well, again, until it really starts to become something different than it is today. And I'm wondering, you know, as I've seen this across the country, I think there are fewer people coming across the border at this point in time. It seems like that's some of the issues are starting to be tamped down. So I don't know if this is going to escalate further, but if it maintains the way it is right now, I don't think that we would do anything about it. But if the times creeped up into, you know, days or weeks, we might want to look at the contract and make sure they adhere to the contract.
Is a week that bar for you? Because there was news that you know, a Russian scientist at Harvard was detained by ICE, and public records indicate she was held in the South Burlington facility for a week. That's, you know, much longer than 72 hours. What would be those factors?
Yeah, I haven't spoken to our Department of Corrections about this in particular. I just need to understand how much it's being violated, and if there is, you know, a creeping approach to maybe a longer detention, that might be problematic, but I don't know. I just don't know. Thank you all.